Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the Iblis Manifestations podcast. So this is the second episode, and I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you all so very much for the support that you showed for the podcast being announced and the first episode. I've had a very surprising number of messages, comments, just general feedback, and I know a lot of you were sharing it around, and I just wanted to let you know that it means a lot. So thank you for that. My focus for these earlier episodes, or the first season, I should say, is to do solo episodes where it's just myself talking and sharing some thoughts and perspectives with yourselves. But I am, of course, quite open to the idea of having some guests on the podcast as well. And actually, there has been some talks as we speak. So, of course, stay tuned. And we'll see where this goes. This is, I'm just trying to make use of some of the spare time that I have, or I should say I don't have. I really don't have any fucking time, but this is something that I found that I really quite enjoy doing, and there's really nothing else like it. I can say what's on my mind in a much easier format than I would, let's say, for example, if I wanted to make a post on social media or even do a band interview. I find that this is by far the most limitless approach to saying or sharing anything, really. Which, of course, is why I even found it appropriate to share last week's episode with you all, and the last stories that I shared in regards to the experiences that I had. Anyway, it is currently 12:43 a.m. and I seem to be recording these at nighttime, even though I'm more or less an early bird nowadays, but I like this time of night. It makes me feel more in touch with myself. There's less pollution around me. There's less bullshit, I guess. And bullshit is necessary too sometimes, but this feels good. Anyway, I hope that you will enjoy the episode. So the thing that I wanted to talk to you about today, as you might have seen, the title of the episode is The Art of Doing. What does it mean to actually act upon something? And what it means to imagine and then bring that imagination into reality. I made a post on my personal social medias recently where I basically talked about how every single thing that happens is a result of imagination. And now that can be something as trivial as you, for example, imagining a certain type of food that you want to eat. You imagine that, and then in your mind, you kind of envision what the taste is going to be like, and you almost get the flavor. The imagination can be so strong sometimes, and you get the cravings. Say, for example, I want to go and make some chicken curry. Let's say, for example, you want the aroma and the flavor. You think about that, okay, how do I want to make this? And I suppose not everyone pays as much attention to this or not, but there is a real art to that you imagine it and then you bring it to reality. And then sometimes it's how you envisioned it and sometimes it's not. The point is that you reached for what you had in your imagination. this could also be used for things that are much bigger. Let's say, for example, you imagine yourself imagine yourself having a career in astrophysics. That's something that you imagine yourself doing. So then you dedicate your life, you dedicate your time and effort and energy into making that thing happen. This is the same as, if you want to build a house, you imagine it first. You imagine the structure. As a songwriter, I can tell you that this is exactly the case. When I want to write a song, a lot of the times I'll be imagining things in my own head first. Or, for example, it could be something even as simple as I will imagine moments, potential and hypothetical moments that could be happening when I'm performing live. And then that alone is enough to inspire me to write a piece of music, which I then can imagine being placed in that situation. It's all very hypothetical, but this is a really beautiful symptom of imagination and creativity. And it goes way beyond that. Like I said, this applies to every single thing that we do. So where am I going with this? The thing that I want to mainly focus on is the part where you take the imagination and then bring it to reality. Now, it's important to understand some things philosophically first, I think. I think it makes it easier to try and have this at the back of your mind. And by that, I'm pointing to the fact that life is movement. Everything is constantly moving, shifting, changing. But there's nothing ever still. You can look at this in many different ways. Obviously, it's somewhat of a philosophical approach, but really, if you think about it, everything is movement. From the moment you were born, you've been moving. If you want to resist that idea, think of this, okay? When you go to sleep, yes, that might be some sort of stillness for you, but you're still breathing. Your own body is still moving to make the whole unit work. And besides that, you have an infinite number of microbiomes moving around your body. And besides that, you have the little floating rock which you reside on going at something nearly 1,000 miles per hour, spinning around itself whilst you're there sleeping and having sweet dreams of, well, hopefully sexual pleasures. But the point I'm trying to get to is that everything is movement. You cannot stop this. Even at death, there is change. When death happens, the life that once existed will instantly turn into other things. Whether that be the maggots surrounding you or whatever. I know there's something to that some might find eerie, but if you really look at it, you are witnessing the coding of the matrix of our universe and how life in itself works. You see the cycle before your own eyes. And in order to exist to the fullest extent, you must embrace movement. You must embrace the art of doing. I'm going to reflect a little bit through a period in my life, which I think this is something that will probably come up quite a lot throughout the episodes of the podcast. I think even when I have guests on, this is probably something that will be mentioned. But if you're aware or if not, I'm happy to obviously explain it now. Basically, I used to be quite obese for a while. I went up to 18 and a half stone. I think that is roughly around 118 kilograms. And I'm not the tallest guy in the world. I'm about, I think, 5'8", just between 5'8" and 5'9", I think. You know, I'm not the tallest creature you'll ever meet. But the point being that I was quite overweight. I was obese. I had a very unhealthy lifestyle. I had an even unhealthier mindset. Basically, I was a fucking miserable human being. I didn't move, you know, like I used to wake up and I used to spend almost all day, every day in bed and do nothing. And the people around me would often question, like, why am I doing that? Why am I wasting time? And my response at the time, or excuse, shall I call it, was that, oh, it's because of anxiety. Oh, I am so depressed right now that I can't even think of getting out, let alone actually going out and doing things and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, just the normal stuff that every person really should be doing. I was resisting the movement. And, you know, sadly, I see this a lot nowadays with a lot of other people, that there's always an excuse for not doing. There's always a reason that you can find for not pulling your own weight. No pun intended. I mean, literally not doing what you should be doing, whether it's in serving your community, whether it is in helping out the people around you, or most importantly, above all, helping yourself. I see this a lot, and actually this is one of the reasons why I wanted to make this episode, because I wanted to hopefully ignite some harsh truths in your little brains. No, of course, this is mostly a personal reflection, but the thing I'm trying to get to is, from my own personal standpoint, that was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because it was a situation of you either make it or break it. And I like to think that I made it, and I learned some very important lessons along the way. And my point of this is to share those lessons with you. Let's take a moment to reflect on my mental state at that time. So, obviously, as some of you may know, I am in a band called Trivex. And this was around the time that we actually released, or were going to release, our very first album, Sin. It eventually came out on November 13th, 2016. Now, for this record, obviously, I worked really, in my head, I thought I worked really hard. And the hard work that I did was just nourish ideas over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. I was constantly nourishing ideas of how the album could go, how it should go, and little did I pay attention to the actual execution of those ideas, and partially the people I had involved in executing those ideas. The problem being that at the time, in my mindset, I was constantly thinking of, wow, when this album comes out, this is going to be a big part of my legacy. Every note is going to be recorded in history, and this is a part of what I'm going to be remembered for. And sure, of course, there's some merit to those things. But what I didn't realize is, what good is that if it's not executed correctly? And if these ideas are not actually captured properly to be stamped into time. So let me be a little bit clearer on that. So throughout the time that I had moved to the UK and I had formed, or I should say reformed, Trivex with the British lineup that I had here, I did a lot of songwriting. I made a shit ton of material, but I feel that I didn't stick to all of it, and at times I was simply trying too hard to make something that was weird and kind of freaky, because I think there was maybe a slight insecurity in being direct with my music and my art, which led to an album in the end, which was quite strange in terms of the results, actually. It's not my best work, although I can see the intentions behind it. So, long story short, at that point, I thought that this was going to be my life's legacy, what I'm going to be remembered for, and obviously it's only our first album. And then came the disappointment. FYI, just like a little trivia here for all of you listening, when the album Sin came out, it sold exactly 2 copies on the day of its release. 2 copies, okay? That's what, 20 quid? Add postage as well, if you will. But that's what it was. Obviously, that album has long since sold out. I think it sold out 4 years ago or something. And things have grown at a very reasonable rate for us. I'm nowhere near where I want to be yet, but I feel like I'm on the right path now. And part of that is because of these disappointments. And when you put the 2 and 2 together, you realize that life is basic maths. It's just basic mathematics. And it's far more black and white than we perceive it to be from the human perspective. I think we have an emotional attachment to things, which makes us think that our bias somehow changes the truth. Now, that could be the case, but only by one thing. By acting, by doing, not sitting around and doing fuck all. So at that time, the reason why I brought up the story of the album is because I find it to be a very good example of what happens when you have all these ideas but you don't act upon them. Because what good is an idea if you don't act upon it? You might have $1 million idea in your head. Does that make you a fucking genius? Sure, maybe, but what good is being a genius if nothing of that is coming into the world? And if none of that information is going to be manifested into a physical reality? And this is why now, having learned my life lessons, oftentimes the hard way, I've realized that you have to act upon things that you want. You can create your own reality. You can use your imagination to, let's say, select the brush and the color that you want to paint your world and reality with. But you still have to actually fucking do it. You have to put in the work in order to make this happen. Sitting there and just imagining, yes, in the context of magic, there's some good to that, but in my opinion, nothing beats fucking crafting towards something when it is met with the very key element of consistency. I can't stress enough the importance of consistency, because this is the very tool that basically allows you to bring that imagination into reality. You know the saying, you gotta reach for the stars to even get to the branch of the tree, or something like that? That's basically it. So for example, when I mentioned about the fitness and health progress that I had, what do you think was the real reason for me getting those results in terms of action? Of course, it was consistency. I didn't one day just out of nowhere go on a fucking 10-mile run and then, that was it. No, you can't do it overnight. You have to do it little by little every single day. And it requires a lifestyle change. And if you really truly care about something, it doesn't have to be fitness, it doesn't have to be music, it can be anything. If you are really passionate about something, consistency is what will get you results. I'll even make a small mathematical example of it, because I have learned that life and the universe is very much running on a mathematical basis. A very precise one at that. Let's look at things like this. You've got a goal set, you got a target, and you want to reach that. Hypothetically speaking, in order to reach that goal or target, you need 300, let's say, EXP, like a video game. Let's say 300 EXP you need to get to that goal. Now, how you can gain these EXPs is if you work towards that thing every day and earn 1 EXP a day, right? Okay. Now, in what way does this relate to consistency? For example, let's say that you try to work towards this thing for 7 days a week, so that would be 7 EXP, but then one of the days you fuck up and you lose a point. You are still left with 5 EXP. And eventually, you are still going to reach number 300. Meaning what? What am I trying to get to here? Meaning that you will still get the results that you want. You might just get to it a bit slower. So when people start a project or they start doing something and then they give up halfway through, it's all in their fucking head. If you are consistent with it, if you really care about it, and if you simply dismiss the idea of giving up, you will eventually get to it. And this is how the reality of our world works. It's wired to work in such a way. And sure, the timing can be relevant as well, in terms of how long it will take you for that to happen. But, as the saying goes, better late than never. Okay? And with that little math equation there in mind, there's another thing that's also very important, and it's that we always say, oh, I really want to do this thing. I'll start in January, or I'll start tomorrow, or I'll start next week. I'll start this next year when I've got a little bit more time, and that is, as much as we are all guilty of this. I can sometimes be guilty of this too, although I tend to give myself a bit of a slap when I realize that I'm doing it. But that is really the most irrelevant argument, an excuse of all time. If you want to do something, if it really matters to you, you start doing that now. You got to approach every day remembering that eventually one day, if you're lucky enough, you might be on a deathbed at old age, and you might be reflecting back on the time that you have right now in your hands, in front of you. What would you do then? What would you do if you were on the deathbed and you had the ability and the capacity to return back in time to where you are at right now in this very moment? What would you do? Is it sit around, scroll on your phone, look through your TikTok feed? I doubt it. And hey, listen, there's no judgment here from me. You do what works for you. It's your time. Just like I would never tell you to spend your money a certain way. I would never tell you to do anything. This is the same. I would never tell you to spend your time doing a specific thing. All I'm doing is reminding you that that will happen. Like I said, if you're lucky enough, if you are privileged enough to actually make it to old age, where you can sit on a deathbed and reflect upon the time that you've had. Because at the state of the world right now, there's a possibility that the moment where you ask for that time machine in your head and the moment where your life flashes before your eyes may very well be when the jaws of death are going to devour you and everyone that you know through a mushroom cloud. That's also a possibility. Everything is a possibility. So what you gotta do, or rather what I tell myself to do, and I'm now sharing the thought process with you, is to remember that that day will come. So use your time wisely. Because when this realization sets in on a deeper level, the excuses of, oh, I'm depressed today, I don't have motivation, I'm feeling anxious, they mean nothing. Because now there's an urgency of survival. And now you have to do what you have to do. Whatever it is, of course, for yourself. You know, you might already be doing those things, which is fucking great, you know. If you need to reevaluate that, then that's good too. But if you're holding back, don't do yourself a disservice. If you feel like your purpose is really in something, and you know what, sometimes we don't know that either. We don't really know. But this is why it's important to do things, because once you get moving, then eventually the right thing will make its way through. You will start to learn. But being still, you learn nothing. Your ideas mean nothing if you're not doing anything for them. Again, it's probably important to also point out here that this is a bit of a battle that I have with myself, because I once used to be someone who would sit around and just make excuses all day of why they're not doing things. And, you know, in my head at the time as well, I really thought that I was right. I really thought that, you know, somehow I was going to get what I wanted. But the fact of the matter is, life never just hands you stuff, okay? If you want something, You have to get up and go get it. You have to approach life like a fucking hungry dog stuck to a shoe that will just not let go of biting, regardless of how much everyone is trying to pull it away from him. That's life. You can't fuck around with it. It's too precious. Well, like I said, it's up to you how you want to do that. All I'm doing is sharing my own newfound internal wiring with you, hoping that perhaps in some way you might find motivation from this, or perhaps you might learn something from this. Perhaps you're someone who, I don't know, does too much. I don't think there is such thing, but maybe you listen to me and go, holy fuck, this guy's insane. I need to slow down to stop becoming like him. Maybe you do. But if you do, that only means I'm going to get further ahead. But really, the point I'm mostly trying to get across is just do something. Whatever it is you need to do, fucking do it. There's always the excuse at the back of your mind that says, oh, well, things are actually more complicated in life than they seem like that. You create your own fucking reality. All I hear when I am confronted by those kind of thoughts in my own head is the little bitch in me that I need to fucking mute and prove wrong. Don't let that be your only source of guidance. And on that note, I will be closing the episode here. Thank you very much to all of you for taking the time to listen to the Iblis Manifestation podcast. I very much appreciate it. And I really do hope that, you could get some motivation from some of this, although I'm a firm believer that discipline always outweighs motivation, because you don't have motivation every day. Discipline you can have every single minute. And I think that is something that is also very important in putting into the grand perspective of what I've just been talking about. Of course, there's a lot of different things when it comes to the logistics of, well, the art of doing. But this is about as much as I can really talk about in one piece. There's things like time management and, learning to be disciplined. There's a lot of different things, but I think there's yet time to explore all of those through later episodes. But for now, take this, and I hope that it serves you well. And if you need to revisit it at any point, please, by all means, use this in however way you wish. I want to take a moment to thank you all for supporting Iblis Manifestations, myself, Trivex, and the many of my other goddamn fucking pages that I run. And I hope to see you all down the road. I'll see you guys at the next episode.